Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Friday, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Fighter95. I hope you're having a great week today. I hope you all have a great week. We're here in Luxembourg today. We're starting our trip here in Luxembourg, and we're doing another one of our game day flights. And today we're here to explore in the Netherlands today. We're going to be doing some flying around the Netherlands today. So we're here to talk about one of the most underrated rivalries in European football, and that is because we're going to be checking out Ajax and Feyenoord, aka the Klassieker. This legendary rivalry of the two Dutch giants of Amsterdam and Rotterdam. Ajax and Feyenoord. This legendary rivalry has been around since 19. Their first meeting, over 200 meetings between these two legendary Dutch clubs have been played over the years. Of course, this rivalry has produced some of the greatest talents in world football history. From Johan Cruyff to Marco van Basten to Ruud Gullit and many, many more legendary Dutch stars. But there's way more to this than just on the pitch. This is also a very heated one off the pitch, too, with the passionate supporters of both these clubs. So that is why we ended up doing this rivalry today. Not usually very often we get to do something in the Netherlands and Benelux region in general. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone in chat. All the lurkers and stuff, hello. I hope you're all doing well this afternoon. And yes, it's been quite snowy down there in Indiana where we're from. 3 to 5 inches last night, so something pretty big. Of course. So that is what we're going to do here. Just going to do this for just a bit. So here's our nav map for a bit. So our nav map for today, we're going to be around 3,000 feet. Not much altitude today. We can go pretty low. So we'll start our trip here in Luxembourg. We'll fly over Luxembourg City. I thought that would be a pretty nice thing to do some flying. Luxembourg City. We'll make our way to Maastricht. In the Netherlands, we'll check out Maastricht, of course. We'll do some flying over Maastricht for our first leg. The Echo Hotel Bravo Kilo. Second stop will get us through. From there, we'll fly over to Eindhoven. We're going to be doing a brief flyover of the city of Eindhoven to check out one of the big three of the Netherlands. We'll actually be visiting all three of the big three Netherlands clubs. So the first one we'll visit is PSV in Eindhoven. I'll talk a little briefly about PSV, but that's not the point of this slide. We'll talk about PSV a little bit. Then, of course, from there, we'll make our way to Rotterdam. And we'll fly over, of course, the iconic Stadion Feyenoord Stadium, also known by its nickname, the Kite. The Cup. We'll fly over there. We'll also be flying through downtown Rotterdam, and we'll even pay a visit to the castle, which is home to Sparta Rotterdam, the oldest club in the Netherlands. And we'll make our second stop here at Rotterdam Airport. Echo Hotel Romeo Delta. We'll make our second stop here. And then for the third and final leg, we'll go through the Hague. We'll fly over down the center of the Hague, of course, and then we'll make our way east. We'll make our way to Amsterdam. We'll check out Johan Cruyff Arena, home of Ajax. And then we'll fly over downtown Amsterdam, fly around 1,000 feet, and fly around the iconic city itself. That, then make our way just briefly outside to our last stop at Echo Hotel Charlie Alpha. Yeah, we're not landing at the big airport in Schiphol, but we are going to land at the smaller airport instead. That is really our flight plan for today. Should be a pretty simple flight. We're taking the good old X Cub today. I thought, especially with the last airport being a pretty small airport, thought that would be nice to take over for our trip. that is where we're going to do this morning. Before we get started with this rivalry, of course, and all that sort of stuff, so let's get our plane up and going. Here, we're going to alternate press. So let's go ahead and get this up and going. So we really don't need that much takeoff space here. If you guys want to know the server, we're on Southeast Asia server. We've that's where we're going here today. Of course, for our flight, this was not that easy of a choice. But this week there really wasn't too many big games in our sports. The only other ones I did consider was the Sunderland Newcastle game. Was the other game I ended up picking was between this one and Sunderland Newcastle United. And while I do think the Sunderland Newcastle game is pretty nice, we might cover it in a later date. I just felt like this game is probably more important, especially this is the biggest game in the Netherlands. And we don't usually cover others besides England. Most people will talk about the big five leagues and don't cover the other countries. I want to fly into a country I won't usually do a ton. No. No. And we're going to do go. And we're going to do go ahead and do this. This is Luxembourg City, here in Luxembourg. Now, if you guys aren't aware about Luxembourg, of course, this is actually one of the wealthiest states in Europe per capita. If you talk about per capita, the Luxembourg is a uh, very wealthy nation. Its GDP per capita is one of the highest in all of Europe. It's also a kingdom. Currently ruled, it's a parliamentary monarchy ruled by the Grand Duke Guillaume V, who's been reigning since October 3rd of this year. But yeah, GDP per capita is the most of any nation in the world. GDP per capita is $154,000 per person, which is by far the first. Very, very wealthy nation, and a very wealthy city. This is downtown Luxembourg City. Oh. Of course, we're going to go ahead and turn left. turn right into 344 degrees. We're going to go ahead and talk about the rivalry matchup that we're going to be covering. I'm going to talk about this rivalry in a bit more detail. So this rivalry here is simply known as the Klassieker. It's actually Dutch, or the Classic. It's called simply Die Klassieker, or it's from Dutch meaning the classic. This iconic Dutch football rivalry hails between the top clubs of both Amsterdam and Rotterdam, Ajax and Feyenoord respectively. This iconic matchup has been playing around since 1921. 207 meetings total between the two clubs. Ajax have been the more successful of the two clubs, with 95 wins in Derby. In fact, the total record since this as well, the record is 295 wins for Ajax, 49 draws, and 63 victories for Feyenoord. But this rivalry goes beyond the football rivalry. It transcends into mainly the city rivalry between Amsterdam and Rotterdam. And the rivalry of this has actually been going on since the 13th century, when these two cities became to get the right to their city rights during that time. The inhabitants of these cities differ significantly in attitudes and cultures, which is reflected on the pitch. And it's seen between the artists of Amsterdam and workers of Rotterdam. As you know, Amsterdam is a place in the Netherlands that's known for its culture, producing many artists and actors. As a result, Ajax's style of play has been a long source of pride of supporters and an irritation for Feyenoord fans. The Rotterdamers feel those of Amsterdam to be those of grandeur as well. While Rotterdam is more of a working town with their working class roots and proud of their work ethic. So it's more than just a rivalry on the pitch, it's pretty much the same way off the pitch. Now, the history of these two clubs, the first encounter between them was back on October 9th, 1921 in Rotterdam. And it was surrounded with controversy during the first Classic. Of course, this match initially ended 3-2 in Ajax's favor. However, this was later officially declared 2-2 due to Feyenoord's protest to what they believed was a dubious goal by Ajax. Of course, that was the beginning of things to come between these two clubs. Of course, there's also been a competition of who would get the biggest stadium between the two clubs during the 30s and 40s. Of course, in 1928 was the construction of the Olympic Stadium in Amsterdam, which is still used today, by the way, which had a capacity of 31,000, which was then the biggest in the Netherlands. Of course, in 1934, we actually got a hello, Perico Ada, good to see you. Oh, hey, good to see you, Perico. Hola, I hope you're all doing well. Yes, I do flight simming, believe it or not. I'm a flight sim YouTuber. Hey, good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for the follow. Yes, I am an Espanol supporter, by the way, from the States. I've been following the club over the past 2 years. So, been a very big supporter. So, today we're doing a stream. I'm doing the Gameday matchup between Ajax and Feyenoord, and I've been doing flight sim streams since 2021. Yes, I'm a big flight simmer. A lot of people don't know about that. But welcome on in, Perico and Alda. I hope you're doing well. So, that is what we're doing. I was talking about the history of it when you popped in. So, that is what we're doing here today. Our flight plan, by the way. Thank you. I appreciate it. I've been supportive for the last 2 years. And my story with Espanol was, I've actually been a Premier League fan of Everton. You never heard about the club, but I've been following them since COVID, and I thought, I like the English game. I want to see what Spain's kind of like. I want to get into La Liga. I want to only keep one club, and I'd rather pick La Liga. And I want to look for a club that's like Everton. Overshadowed by a bigger neighbor, rich history, founder of the league, blue and white. I came to Espanol, and I actually grown to like the club since their promotion back in 2024, since their 2023 season. And I felt like I'm glad I did pick Espanol. Really cool club, a lot a lot of history in that club. And you know what? I might cover Espanyol during the Barcelona derby if that ends up being the case. So I'll talk more about it. Yeah, the minority definitely is better. It's too easy to get into the bigger clubs. Absolutely. So glad to be here as well. Been a big supporter of it. But the difference is that between Everton and Espanyol, Everton's one of the biggest clubs in England. They've been very successful. Espanyol, sadly, haven't gotten a Spanish title just yet. It'll come one day. I bet you it will. So I'm going to get back to my slideshow. I don't want to get too off track. So hope you understand. So basically, the Mer Stadium was built for Ajax for 22,000. And of course, this was topped by Feyenoord, the big Dutch club in the Rotterdam. They opened a brand new stadium, simply known as the Cup, and with the capacity of a massive 64,000 people, which is still a big stadium. And of course, Ajax then built a new one in 1937. Or Feyenoord expanded the Cup again to the biggest capacity, 69,000 people. Of course, from the season of 1947 to 48 up to 1956, there have been no competitive matches between the two Dutch clubs, and that was due to the fact that Feyenoord never won their regional league during this period and never went to the championship playoffs to face Ajax. However, this was thankfully fixed when in 1956-7 they introduced the Eredivisie, Dutch First Division. The regional leagues were abolished of a single national league, and guess what that meant? Feyenoord and Ajax were able to play against each other once again. They have met ever since, because these two clubs have never been relegated. And of course, some big matchups. 1960 was the highest scoring matchup between the two, with a total 14 goals, with a score of 9-5 favor Feyenoord. That was also the year Feyenoord won the league, with Ajax in second. Of course, it was then almost replicated 4 years later. And again, another Feyenoord win. However, what truly built this rivalry even more so, yeah, but we were 6th all time in the table. I know. Absolutely. Like 89 seasons in La Liga. Same numbers as Atletico. I think a lot of people don't know this, but Espanyol played the same number of seasons as Atletico. Only 4 more clubs played more, being Atletico, being Athletic Club, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. 3 clubs that have never been relegated, and Valencia, which has only had a handful of relegation. So a lot of people don't know about that as well. Espanyol's been a very historic club. Sadly, Espanyol have always been overlooked, which is a shame because they have played a large part in La Liga's history. In fact, a lot of people don't know this, but not get too off track, but the Parakeets scored their very first ever La Liga goal, where Panas Prat scored the first goal for La Liga, for Espanyol. So that's probably some facts I think some people probably don't know. But the big point of the Eredivisie and the Declassicer, however, was in the 70s. And this was during the glory days of Dutch football, was the 70s. Feyenoord, Ajax, and PSV all competing for world competition. But it was especially these. In fact, they were 2 of the best clubs in the world during that. And there were also riots between these fans. During the early 70s, Ajax have won 3 European Cups and an Intercontinental Cup. And by the way, the European Cups, this was what the Champions League was called back in the day. So they were absolutely a juggernaut. Feyenoord then had also a European Cup of their own, plus an Intercontinental Cup, and a UEFA Cup, which is now the Europa League. And all these trophies won by Feyenoord at the time were the first to be won by a Dutch club. As a result, this success led to the Netherlands national team being represented filled with the majority of players for these clubs. This was important during the 1974 and 78 FIFA Cups. Of course, during the 1980 season, I forgot. Um, yeah. But of course, this grew in 1980 when Feyenoord legend Wayne Jansen played for Feyenoord, made his leap to Ajax, which created a lot of anger for the Feyenoord fans. And apparently, a Feyenoord fan even threw an ice ball in his eyes. Of course, even crazier was just 2 seasons later, Ajax legend Johan Cruyff transferred from Ajax to Feyenoord, which is basically the Netherlands equivalent of Figo going from Barcelona to Real Madrid. Um, and this was due to a contract dispute between Cruyff and Ajax. Cruyff wanted to remain at Ajax, however, Ajax bought due to his and it ironically angered both fans because Ajax fans didn't want to go to the big rival, and Feyenoord fans not like the fact that an Ajax legend would be joining the club. However, he ended up actually proving the Feyenoord fans wrong, and Cruyff was a big piece of Feyenoord's title run that year. Of course, sadly, both clubs have had a fall in grace over the years, and while fan violence has increased, there's always police presence in the derby, and we'll talk about that. Of course, April 7, 2024, Feyenoord beat Ajax 6-0, the biggest win ever for Feyenoord over Ajax. So, that covers a bit about the history of this derby, by the way, between Feyenoord and Ajax, of course. In this iconic Dutch derby. So that covers the history of this derby and the history of this rivalry of the Klassiker. That covers it a bit. So this rivalry definitely a big deal. I know that um, definitely a big deal for this game. Now this year, by the way, um, this year's rivalry, this year's matchup between um, Ajax and Feyenoord has been a pretty interesting case this year. Um, So this year's Eredivisie standings, of course, Feyenoord are second in the table with 34 points, and Ajax are actually fourth. Usually they're in the top three, but this season Ajax have been a little bit underperforming, as NEC has actually even overtaken them. Of course, both clubs are still well behind PSV this year, with who's been absolutely dominating this year's Eredivisie. Um, um, PSV have a goal differential of plus 29. Um, they have been absolutely dominating this year, of course. Looks like another Eredivisie title for PSV, of course. They've been absolutely crushing it this year in the Eredivisie. And they're also doing pretty decently in the Champions League, too. 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses. They're above quite a few other bigger clubs. They're certainly above Ajax, Villarreal, Club Brugge, and Athletic Club, and even above Benfica. Well, PSV really good this year. Unfortunately, Ajax have been terrible this year in the Champions League, and they're not doing so well domestically. Well, Feyenoord this year, they're in the Europa League this year. Um, and so far in the Europa League, Feyenoord have been really disappointing in the Europa League. 30th place out of 36. Been very disappointing this year. I mean, it's not easy to play in the Europa League, but they have really been struggling. So that basically is the cover. In terms of other stuff this week, on Saturday we'll be doing National Park stream here today. We'll be doing the beautiful National Park stream on Saturday. We'll be going over Lassen Volcanic National Park in Northern California, a really beautiful park that sadly doesn't get a lot of the attention that some of the other parks are covering here. So we'll be doing Sunday at Lassen. Should be an absolute stunning and cracking game. Hey, Uncle B-Sim, good to see you. It's been a while since I've seen you on my channel, my dude. I hope you're doing well. I'm gonna give him a shout out for Uncle B-Sim, a longtime supporter of the channel. Welcome on in, my dude. He does fight some streams on occasion too. I haven't checked on your stream in a while, but good to see Uncle B-Sim. I hope you're doing well. We're doing our game day flight, Ajax Feyenoord, the Klassieker, here in the Netherlands, of course. Got some pretty big games this week. Everton are going to take on Chelsea, which is a huge matchup this week for the Toffees. Huge game for Everton. A win could easily put them in the top 4 this year's Premier League. The other big game, my other club I follow, Espanyol, is also playing Saturday against Getafe. Very big matchup for them. More locally, of course, Louisville basketball is going to be back against Memphis. So, against Memphis tomorrow. So, another game for Louisville basketball should be some big sport events, of course. And then the college football playoff is going to happen soon. I know Indiana, Indiana's not going to be playing for a little while. They're going to be playing the Rose Bowl, of course. But I'm hoping Indiana wins the national championship. I think it would be really cool for IU to win a title. For IU football. Yeah, Indiana's not going to be playing until January 1st. So, the big old Rose Bowl. So that's going to be mainly be doing what we're doing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the Klassieker, and unfortunately, this rivalry is heated on the pitch. It's probably just as heated off the pitch, because since the 70s, there have been many clashes between the supporters of both these clubs. It includes destructions inside the stadium, the most infamous of which was in 1997, the Beverwijck. This one Ajax fan, Carl Bergholm, was beaten to death by rival supporters, and it triggered more strict policies of the Dutch Football Association to tackle hooliganism. As a result, due to the incident, the two Klassikers during 1997-1998 were played without away fans. And that's not even the worst of this. And it only got worse in 2004 when Feyenoord player was taken to the hospital with head, neck, and rib injuries after Feyenoord players were attacked by Ajax hooligans. And another Feyenoord player was also attacked as well. Robert Van Persie, who's also now their manager, had to be rescued by Ajax coach Jan van Schip and Ajax player Daniel de Ritter for more attacks. Of course, there was also attacks in 2005, where riots took place in Feyenoord's ground on hooligans of both sides. And apparently, traveling Ajax fans had demolished a train transporting them to Rotterdam. And of course, and also equally as bad, of course, Feyenoord fans often chant anti-Semitic slogans when they face Ajax, and that's because Ajax has long association with Amsterdam's Jewish community. As a result, a lot of these sometimes get said a lot, and that obviously is very controversial. And of course, this still continues going on even nowadays. It's very notorious rivalry for hooligans. Pretty bad. So, definitely something to keep an eye on here as we head up our way to Moscow. So, we're just about 170 nautical miles from our final stop. So that is where we're going. that is where we're going here first. Basically, we're going to be in the Maastricht soon, so we're about halfway there, of course. Big stuff going on this year, obviously, about these clubs, of course. But for the Dutch League, there's several other really important clubs for the Dutch League. Of course, outside of Feyenoord and Ajax, the two, there's also the last member of the big three, that being PSV, of course, of Eindhoven. There's several other really historic clubs that have done well in Europe, by the way. Other well-known clubs include Sparta Rotterdam, the oldest professional club in the Netherlands. You have Go Ahead Eagles, who just won the Dutch Cup last season. You also have Willem II in Tilburg. And of course, one very interesting club that has been around for years, has even in modern times has actually been on the rise in many years, and that is AZ Alkmaar. Had quite a successful run in the Eredivisie over the last couple of years out of Alkmaar. So some very successful clubs in the Netherlands for many years. But yeah, Dutch football is absolutely primed for young talents. So many really great young talents have been playing through the Eredivisie. And of course, outside of the big three, the club that's played the most seasons in the Eredivisie is FC Twente in Eschede. But yeah, lots of really big, interesting clubs that played in the. So definitely very important here. So as we arrive at Maastricht, we're going to go ahead and talk about a bit about some other really cool things about Dutch football, and one of the other really interesting about the Netherlands, of course. In terms of European competitions, is currently, if you finish in the top two, you qualify for the Champions League stage. If you place third, you get the Champions League, but you're placed in the qualifying round of the league path. Fourth place gets you the Europa League second qualifying round, and of course, fifth is the European competition playoffs between the fifth and eighth place and sixth and seventh place, and the two winners qualify for the Europa Conference League. If you were to somehow win the Dutch Cup, well, you qualify automatically for the Europa League. So that's definitely something important. Of course, that's definitely something. That is basically some interesting information about the Dutch League. A lot of people probably don't know. We're about to arrive at Maastricht pretty soon. We're in the Netherlands. We're actually in Belgium right now. We're not far from the city of Liège. And if you guys don't know about anything sports thing about Liège, is that they're home to the club that's been around the Belgian league the longest of any club. Standard Liège, very old club, has been one of Belgium's most successful football clubs. though nowadays it's been overshadowed by Club Bruges in Brussels, and of course RSC Anderlecht, which is just southwest of downtown Brussels. So, but they're a very successful club with a long history in Belgium. So, but yeah, some very big games coming up. I did pick next week. This one was a tough one, but next week our next matchup um, for our big game day flights, we're actually going to cover our first NFL game on the series. We're covering Packers versus Bears. Um, Huge game. If you don't know, it's the NFL's oldest rivalry, the Green Bay Packers and Chicago Bears. Big matchup. There really isn't a lot of big um, soccer games out there. Um, so I'm going to cover Packers versus Bears. This is going to be the second time the Packers and Bears meet this season, so I wanted to cover it here. We're going to cover from the Bears to the Packers, of course. So, should be a really nice matchup next week, of course. Very historic game, of course. Should be one as well. Of course, the one afterwards is Oilers versus Flames. Should be a pretty nice NHL matchup. And finally, for January 2nd, I did schedule this to be Old Firm game, but I also am thinking about changing it for the Barcelona Derby because Espanyol's played extremely well this year. So if Espanyol somehow continue to do really well this year and win both the Getafe and Athletic Club games, I might actually do the Barcelona Derby. Even if it is lopsided, it's still the Barcelona Derby. So at the RCD East. Yeah, I guess that can work. I think I think the Barcelona Derby is good. Now, so Maastricht, by the way, for those who don't know where we're going, our first stop is going to be in Maastricht. This Dutch city, located in the southeast part of the country, is the capital and largest city of the province of Limburg. It's developed from a Roman settlement. It was known as Trajectum on the Somme to a medieval river trade and religious center. It became a garrison town in the 16th century and an early industrial center in the 19th century. Nowadays, this city is a thriving cultural regional hub. And this place was most well known for being the Maastricht Treaty, as the birthplace of the current of the euro, which is the currency that is now used nowadays. It's actually got the second highest number of heritage buildings in the Netherlands, with 1,677 buildings. Second after Amsterdam, is visited for shopping and recreation by tourists. But there's definitely some really cool things here in this city. There's definitely some really cool sites here. Of course, the most well-known part of sites. They got several parks and promenades along the Meuse River, mainly the oldest bridge in the Netherlands, Servaasbrug from the 13th century. They had multiple different fortifications. The inner city district, including the Beregshof, which is the best known square in the city with known pubs and restaurants. Several basilicas. They got multiple squares. All sorts of stuff here in the city. It's also got several museums, including the Fine Arts Museum, and that is the Bonnefanten Museum, which contains medieval sculptures, early Italian paintings, Renaissance painting, contemporary art. But lots of really cool stuff here in Maastricht. Very underrated city here in the Netherlands. I'm going to go ahead and drop down to 1,500 feet. Drop 1,000 feet. So, sports fan, of course. Maastricht definitely pretty important, so we'll get some really cool city. One really cool thing, though, about the Netherlands, and one thing I really do enjoy about the Netherlands is really cool, um, is that the Netherlands actually, much of the land in the Netherlands has actually been reclaimed from the sea. Um, and it's actually really cool how they managed to reclaim a lot of the land that they built. And the way they did reclaim a lot of this land was because they built a lot of polar areas. They were preserved this land reclamation when they built a series of drainage systems, dikes, canals, and pumping stations. They built a lot of this area for really ingenious. The fact they got to create more land was pretty impressive. But this also gives it the reputation of the Netherlands being one of the flattest countries in all of Europe. It's very flat. The tallest peak point in the Netherlands is Valsenburg, which is just above 1,000 feet, which is not a lot of height. I mean, you could easily get places in France, Germany, even other countries like Czechia, Poland have had higher peaks than I believe even Belgium has a higher point, even higher than what the Netherlands got. So definitely pretty interesting stuff here with the Netherlands. Now, if you guys want to know about my favorite, if I had to pick a favorite Dutch club, that's a tough choice, man. Because I know the big three are the most popular, but you know me, I like to pick the smaller club that has a lot of history. So if I had to pick my favorite Dutch club, it would be Sparta Rotterdam, probably. I mean, a very historic club. It's been around. Sparta Rotterdam has been around for many years. They're among the clubs that spent the most time in the Eredivisie. Rich history. Sparta Rotterdam's got some really cool history. A lot of people don't know about it too much. It's a very historic club, and rightfully. This here to our left, um, that is Edgeden to our left, flying over the Meuse River. About to reach Maastricht very shortly. Oh, nice. Yeah, Mount Lassen should be absolutely gorgeous. California's got some great parks, and Lassen, again, I know a lot of people when they think of California national parks, they think of Yosemite, Sequoia National, Sequoia National Park, Yosemite, Death Valley, and Joshua Tree. Do you think of those as like California's parks? Um, but the state's got so many really cool parks. We visited earlier on. We got to visit. Um, Earlier, we got to actually. We're going to be checking out all of California's parks, which also includes Channel Islands, which is really underrated. Is Channel Islands. We're going to be visiting Kings Canyon. Um, and in Redwoods, another really cool parks. So, like I said, California's got amazing scenery around. It's just the big shame of California is there's also so many people living in the state. Of course, it gets very congested. But if you explore nature, there's not many states that can rival the state of California. This here is Maastricht, everyone. So, finally arrived here at Maastricht. Arrived for our first stop of the day here. Our airport, thankfully, isn't very far. Right, it will make our landing here. Yeah, all national forest stuff. So, definitely some really cool stuff. So, our next national park after Lassen, though, I've already planned it out, but the next one after Lassen Volcanic National Park, I planned this out, is Denali, which is going to be really epic. Can't wait to visit Denali next week. Should be absolutely gorgeous. Sadly, we're not going to be going to Denali during our time next year. But we'll visit Glacier Bay though, which should be really beautiful. We're gonna go ahead and put the plane like on autopilot, and we're gonna land at Maastricht Airport. And this is actually a very well-known cargo airport hub for cargo airport. Known for cargo stuff. So once we land, we'll talk about Feyenoord, of course, one of the two big Dutch clubs here. So really cool stuff, and I like all the stories and stuff too. So yeah, I'm very excited for the next year. I can't wait to get my new PC. My brother helped build my new PC. I've been wanting to upgrade for quite a while now, especially to handle the new sim and stuff. I know my computer does pretty well with the sim already. So I'm excited to get me a new computer so I can have better performance with this sim, and also so I can play some more other games that I've been wanting to play for quite some time. And thankfully I've gotten nearly every part of it already shipped. It's already been shipped to my house. I'm still waiting for the graphics card to get to the house. Of course, I hope I can get this prepared after stream so it wouldn't affect my streaming schedule. No, not my smoothest lane. We'll stop right here. So, stop right here for just a minute or two. If you guys want to fly along, we're on the southeast server. Um, and our route is this. So that is where we're going to be, of course. Well, I'm very excited for what we're going to be doing for Christmas, of course. And of course, a stupid bot. Stupid bots. Why do they always have to pop into my channel? They're the worst. You and I don't have to worry about all that, too. So we're going to go ahead and prepare for the next leg, of course. We're going to go ahead and cover our next flight. We're going to go a little bit slower. I think I'm going to keep it around 100 knots, of course. So we'll talk about Feyenoord, the club of Rotterdam, of course. So we're going to go ahead and climb up to head and turn back the power a little. Go ahead. So we're going to talk about Feyenoord next. The legendary Dutch club of Feyenoord, one of the three big clubs here in the Netherlands. Feyenoord beat Rotterdam, of course. They were actually founded back in 1901 as Wilhelmia. It has changed various names before suddenly being called after its neighborhood in 1912 as SC Feyenoord, and later updated to 1978 to SC Feyenoord before changed to Feyenoord in 19. Since 1907, their home ground has been the Stadium Feyenoord. But it's most famously known for its nickname, the Cup, which is literally named the Tub. And it's the second largest team in the Netherlands, of course. But Feyenoord are legendary for being one of the most successful clubs in Dutch football. 16 Dutch football championships, 14 Dutch cups, 5 Johan Cruyff Shields, which is their Super Cup. Internationally, they won a Champions League trophy and 2 UEFA Cups, and an Intercontinental Cup. It has played continuously in the top 10 of the Dutch system since promotion to the forerunner of Eredivisie in 1921. 4 times the inner club in the country, even more so than its rivals Ajax and. However, one really cool thing about Feyenoord is that they're known as a people's club with a large national support. And its most successful period was the 1960s and 70s, when Koen Mulgen, Willem van Hanegem, and Obi Kenval led the club to 6 titles, 6 league titles, 2 European trophies, and an Intercontinental Cup, becoming the first Dutch club in history to win both a European and Intercontinental Cup. Basically, the Intercontinental Cup, if you guys don't know, is basically a competition between UEFA and CONMEBOL, which is the South American competition. In the 21st century, Feyenoord ended an 8-year title drought in 2017 and even won the 2002 UEFA Cup against Borussia Dortmund. So yeah, they're the only Netherlands Cup to win a European trophy this. But Feyenoord, really cool club, very rich history. It's of course, Feyenoord is most well known for their distinctive red and white uniforms. It's similar to that of England's Blackburn Rovers, which had the famous blue and white cut in half, but they also wear black pants, of course. That's their main colors ever since. Feyenoord, of course, have a long history. It would take me way too long to talk about the history of Feyenoord, ever. But Feyenoord definitely has a rich history. Of course, they're one of the big teams. And of course, their stadium they play here is known as the Tub. It's called the Cup. Also officially known as Stadium Feyenoord. Built in, completed back in 1937, this legendary stadium currently hosts 51,000 seats. It's the second largest in the country. It's also hosted the Dutch national team and has even now become a concert venue for people in Rotterdam. Originally, it went up to 69,000 originally when it was all terraces. However, in 1994, it was converted into a 51,000 capacity all stadium, and that's because that's part of the new UEFA regulations. Most of the stadiums have to be all seaters. And it was used for the UEFA Euro 2000 tournament. But this stadium is absolutely huge. Massive stadium, of course. Of course, there have been attempts for a new stadium, but of course they haven't moved anytime soon. Of course, this has long been a home of the Netherlands national football team. In fact, the Netherlands national team has played over 150 international matches here, with the first one against Belgium in 1937, and they played a lot over the years. Also, concerts have also been held here, including the first show being held here by Bob Dylan and Eric Clapton. Of course, the peak of all of it as well. Really neat stadium, really cool place to catch a game, of course. One very interesting thing about the Cup, of course, is its multi-deck layers. So, of course, just as legendary as their stadium, of course, in Dutch football, it has been their supporters, and there is no question. Their supporters are said to be one of the most loyal supporter clubs in the world. Supporting this club during good and bad times. The nickname is Hull Legion, which translates to the Legion, and it can be found everywhere in the Netherlands and even across borders of the Netherlands. And they are a very popular club with large supporters. In fact, the first training season of the season alone attracts thousands of fans to train season. They support this club thick and thin. In fact, Feyenoord is so big of a club that in 1963, 3,000 of them boarded 2 ships to Lisbon where they faced Benfica in the European Cup. When Feyenoord played abroad in European competitions, about 8,000 traveled together to support the team. They have a massive support. And of course, a lot of the club followers acknowledge a close link to the English side of Sunderland. They got a lot of friendship, of course. Of course, they do have one official supporter club, Feyenoord Supporters Vereniging. Independent FSV has around 23,000 members as of 2006. And they act as a liaison between club and fans, produce match programs, away travel to away games, and supporter evening. And they have a lot of passionate fans. Of course, there are some very famous supporters of the club. Some of the famous supporters include Craig Bellamy, who is currently the head coach of the Welsh national team, Walter Bos, Gerard Cox, well-known Dutch singer, Robin Einhorn, former Dutch baseball player, used to play for Major League Baseball, DJ Paul Elstak, hardcore DJ and record producer of Suriname descent, Arjan Urkel, Dennis van der Gest, which is a Dutch judoka, Ernesto Fritz Hoost, kickboxer, John Moragessen, and Raymond Smoutier, a very well-known tennis coach. In fact, some of these guys are also officially Feyenoord ambassadors. Current ambassador is Gerard Meijer, is the current club ambassador. Yes, Feyenoord has a ton of fans. Not really a surprise to see orders of here in the Netherlands. Of course, Feyenoord's other major derbies, of course, we all know about their infamous rivalry with Ajax, of course. However, they do have one other major rivalry, of course, and that is within the city of Rotterdam. And historically, the bigger one was Sparta Rotterdam. And while the rivalry between Sparta and Feyenoord is not really it's bigger on the Sparta side of things. That being said, it's still a historically important one in Dutch football, as it's dated back to the 1910s and 20s, when Sparta was a club for the elite, while Feyenoord was much more for the working class. In fact, the rivalry was tense enough that some Sparta fans have even refused to enter Feyenoord Stadium when Sparta went to the Cup final. Of course, if you go back a couple decades to the 50s, there was much more of a rivalry between these two. Also, of course, interestingly enough, they also have some sort of rivalry abroad with Tottenham Hotspur. And the reason for a lot of those is because of the link with Ajax and Tottenham. And if I were to guess, it's probably because of the Jewish connection of both these clubs to the Jewish community. Because Tottenham had a long history with London's Jewish community in North London. So that's probably what it is. All of those. So pretty important stuff. We'll take a bit of a break, of course, for a bit. Hey, good to see you, Scott Command. Welcome on in. It's going great. We're doing our game day flight. We're doing Feyenoord and Ajax today for our game day flight. E-Klassieker, one of the biggest games in Dutch football. Absolutely huge game, of course. So we're covering one of the biggest games in the Netherlands. Big game, of course. Between two of the teams in the top four of the Netherlands, so should be really competitive. So I hope you're having a good week, my dude. I hope you got some really cool things this weekend. So I hope you all got some really cool plans this weekend. So I hope you got some really. Thanks for giving the shout out. Check out Sky Command, a really great channel and a longtime supporter of the channel. So the reason to take this break is because we're about to arrive into Eindhoven, located in southern province of North Brabant. It's largest municipality in the province, population 249,000 people, the fifth largest city in the Netherlands. And this city became especially growing during the 1900s thanks to the textile and tobacco industry. Well-known companies were founded in the city: EAF Trucks, and of course Philips. The health technology and consumer electronics, Philips. Philips was founded here in Eindhoven and became a multinational conglomerate here in the city. It also famous the globally famous Design Academy Eindhoven for art, architecture, and design. But of course, the other reason we're going to be in Eindhoven, and Eindhoven's got a really cool museum, including an open air museum, and especially a really big museum. They have a Philips museum dedicated to Philips. But of course, the other reason we're also going to be in Eindhoven is because there's a very big club in the city, PSV, which, by the way, PSV is abbreviated as Philips Sport Vereniging, or Philips Sports Association. And yes, this club is actually the second most successful of the Dutch Big Three clubs. Of course, they're also nicknamed the Rood Witten, the Red Whites, and the Lampen, the Light Bulb. But in fact, this is actually a company club, believe it or not, founded back in 1913 by Team for Philips employees. This was a club built for factory workers that worked for Philips. And of course, just like the other members of the Big Three, they've won a European Cup in 1987-88, the UEFA Cup in 1978, and has won the Dutch First Division 26 times. And of course, they won the Super Cup 15 times. This club has produced some great talent. And of course, they produce some amazing talents. Ruud Gullit, Ronald Koeman, Ronaldo Nazario, one of the most iconic football players of all time, Ruud van Nistelrooy, and more. Tons of amazing players, and they played at the Philips Stadion with 35,000 people. But this is another very big club in the Netherlands, and that's why we're flying over this stadium. Well, we're going to take a picture of it. We're going to check out the big three. But in the last couple of years, PSV has actually been the more successful of the big three clubs over the last few years. In fact, they've won the last two Eredivisie titles over the last 2 years. And looks like this year they're going to be pretty much on their way to winning another Eredivisie. They're absolutely crushing it this year. There's no doubt they're going to be an absolutely massive club. That's why we're flying here. Once we fly over that, we're going to talk about the rest of Feyenoord, and we will also get a bit started with Ajax. So, I'm gonna actually go down 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet. We're gonna go down 1,000 feet. So this is the Philips Stadion ahead of us, one of the big facilities here at Eindhoven. But yeah, this city definitely is well known for its technology stuff. Yeah, really cool stuff. This city is definitely very unique. This here is Eindhoven. Beautiful city, of course. Would love to visit the Netherlands. It's definitely one of the underrated places to fly, to visit. So maybe if I ever do go to the Netherlands, I may get a tour at the Feyenoord Stadium in the Rotterdam. Hey, Devil Dude, good to see you, my dude. Yes, I was waiting for you to get here, Devil Dude. Yes, we're actually here in Eindhoven right now because we're gonna pay a visit to PSV for a bit. We're just flying over. We're about to head to Rotterdam after this, which is the home ground of Feyenoord. Hope you had a good dinner, my dude. Sounds like you ate quite a bit. So that is PSV Philips Stadion. We just talked. Yeah, we're gonna head to the coop now. The tub actually is de Kuip. Yeah, it's Dutch. It's not gonna be the easiest thing for me, of course, to say. At least I'm doing the best I can. So we're now heading our way over there right as we speak. So we were just talking a little bit about Feyenoord, of course. Feyenoord, of course, being one of the most historic clubs in the Netherlands. It dates back to 1908. Wilhelma, actually. Bit multiple nicknames, but the big one is the Club on the Maas, Club on the Moose. Also, the Club van het Volk, Club of the Peoples. They have a passionate fan base known as the Han Legion, the Legion. Very passionate fan base, of course, and they've also got some pretty big rivalries with Sparta, of course. So, of course, let's talk about some of the honors they've won. Eredivisie titles, most recently in 2022-2023. 14 of the Dutch Cups, most recently the 2023-2024. They won the Dutch Super Cup, the Johan Cruyff Shield 5 times, most recently in 2024. And yes, they won a European Cup in 1969-1970, in the UEFA Cup in 1973-74, in 2001-2002, in the Intercontinental Cup in 1970, and they ended up beating the Copa Libertadores champion, Estudiantes y La Plata. Very successful club. They got some many great coaches. But of course, the Feyenoord as a club has produced some absolutely insane talents over the years. Of course, where do I even begin with some of the iconic players from Feyenoord? Where do I even begin with some legendary players? So many really big ones here to pick. But of course, if I had to start with any players here, is Cohen Mulgen. He is absolute club legend. He's played more games than any other player at Feyenoord. He spent nearly his entire career here at the club. He's been a big part of them winning many of their trophies from his campaign from 1955 to 1972. Well known for his movement, for his speed, and his tough defense, as well as his hardworking nature, hardworking mentality. He's definitely a club legend. He was a big part of both their Champions League and Intercontinental title in 1970. Big piece, and he was also part of the national team too. But definitely a club legend and one of their all-time great players. Next player, Eddie Peters Garfand. Goalkeeper, 356 appearances for him. He is known for his nickname, Eddie PG, and he was renowned for his ability to stop penalties. And of course, he played for Feyenoord from 1958 to 1970. He also originally played for Ajax, actually, from 1952 to 1958. Of course, then he crossed the line to Feyenoord for 134,000 guilders. But he was definitely very well known for Feyenoord, one of their great goalkeepers, of course. Next player on the list is Wim Jansen. Oh yeah, Cohen has a statue. That's right. He's definitely one of their more iconic players. Is Wim Jansen, one of the greatest Dutch players of all time. Wim Jansen. Been nearly his entire career at Feyenoord from 1965 to 19. Helped win the Champions League in 1970. He also had 165 international caps with the Dutch team. And helped them reach the World Cup finals in 1974, 1978. Still hasn't won the World Cup yet for the Dutch. Maybe one day maybe they'll win it this year. But he was a big part of it. Scored 33 goals during his time at Feyenoord. Of course, he even also played for Ajax. He had infamously crossed the line and played for Ajax in 1980, and he also had a snowball at Jansen's eye during a warm-up. But he is very well known for his incredible defensive ability defensively. His defensive skills, tenacity, pace made him a formidable trio with Frans Hansel and Willem van Hanegem. Who, by the way, I believe he's also on the list too. But an incredible player as well during his time at Feyenoord. Then the next one on the list is Cor Velhen. Now, Cor Velhen is also a well-known defender, and he's definitely a defender for Feyenoord. He played for his entire career at Feyenoord as a defender. He's definitely another club legend, has played for his entire career here at Feyenoord. And we have Dirk Kuyt, is one of our other club legends. He is more of a modern day legend, club legend. Started Utrecht. However, he really became our Feyenoord during the 2003 to 2006 campaigns. In the 2015 to 2017, he became one of Feyenoord's all-time great scorers. But he's definitely a club legend. He's also played a lot of years in Liverpool too, and is a Dutch national team icon as well. But he became especially well known for his time at Feyenoord as a big piece of, and he became a big fan favorite. I put him on the list for Feyenoord icons. Of course, Robin van Persie. He is currently their manager, but he was also a star at Feyenoord himself. He was one of the best strikers during his time in generation at Feyenoord. He played from 2001 to 2004 with the club. And began and ended his senior career in Feyenoord. He was an all-time great player too, especially during his time at Arsenal. But I had to include him on the list because he's also a manager for Feyenoord actually. I'm the manager since February 23rd, 2025. So I had to put Van Persie's name on here. He's definitely an icon. William van Hanegem. I knew I would have to put his name on here eventually. Star midfielder and one of the greatest Dutch talents of all time. Known as the Kirk winner bent one due to his posture, thanks to his bow legs and bent passes. But this dude is an absolute legend at Feyenoord. Scored 88 goals during his 247 appearances for the club during his first tenure. Big time legend, of course. He's one of the all-time great players, known for his aggressiveness, intelligence, and playmaking abilities. And he's played a big part. In fact, he's so famous that Feyenoord even one of the stadium stands after him. Absolute legend of Dutch football. And of course, you also have Ruud Gullit. Funny thing about him, of course, Ruud Gullit actually got his career started at Feyenoord. He's one of the all-time great Dutch stars. Of course, then he moved over to PSV and became a legend with them too. But of course, he really became the superstar when he played for AC Milan. Became an AC Milan icon as well. But I had to include his name on the list. Then we have Joop Bonnergate. He's actually Feyenoord's all-time goal scoring leader. He played for the 1920s. From 1925 to 1937, scored 196 goals for Feyenoord. And helped him won him an Eredivisie title twice and two-time cup winner as well. For the club, passed away at age 47. And the last player, and there are many more Feyenoord. Where do I even begin with the legend? There are still many more iconic players that played for the club. I also could have put Ove Kinval here too, from Sweden. Another iconic player, and he was a big part of Feyenoord's career. Like I said, there are so many. I had a hard time picking which ones. So that's the players I picked for Feyenoord. So that covers a bit about Feyenoord. So I'm going to get started a little bit of Ajax for a bit because the second leg is going to be considerably shorter, I believe. We're going to be going a little bit slower. So I'm going to take a look at Feyenoord's website for a bit. Ink. Window capture. Bingo. Feyenoord, here we go. Feyenoord website. Of course, it's all in Dutch. I'm going to change it to English because I can't read. So, Dutch is actually technically one of the easier languages to learn English from, is Dutch actually. So from here, for the Feyenoord website, contains a bit of this stuff. So from here, you can look at the organization itself, and you can look at the club's history. Here, dating back to 1908, Feyenoord's got some rich achievements, national fame, of course, the famous names. Bo Mojan is a local hero, and he's absolute icon, Mr. Feyenoord. Cor van de Gip, another local hero. He's very well loved by the fans. Whole football made its way. William von Hennigan, and many more big players from the past. Robert Van Persie's also played here too. That's my dad. Really didn't work. But many more iconic players here too, the history and stuff, and it listed their honors. Of course, they also got if you don't want to know what it is, it's probably my dad doing all the stuff outside because we got snow last night. That's probably what's going on. But you can actually do, of course, there's a fan shop. You can also tour the stadium too. There's the stadium website here, the Coop, and you can take a tour of this facility as well. Let's see how much 90-minute stadium tour for 14.5 euros. So you can take a stadium tour for 15 euros. You can tour around the Feyenoord Museum, and you check out the history of this place as well. Good to know. Visit the dressing room, Feyenoord Museum. Got a couple tours here. Really cool place. De Koop is really neat. Though they won't be doing concerts here anymore. They moved it out here due to the noise. And of course, they have multiple fan clubs all across the Netherlands. And the Legion, of course. They got their website too for the Legion. So like I said, there is a lot of really cool things about Feyenoord. Definitely some cool stuff. So that concludes a bit about Feyenoord for a bit. So I'm going to go here and talk a little bit about Ajax just briefly. We're going to cover the rest of it. So tell us English for Coop, and that is Feyenoord. Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Ajax for a bit before we get to Rotterdam. I just want to talk briefly about the club itself. Now, of course, it's Feyenoord's bitter rival, AFC Ajax. This legendary Amsterdam club has been around since 1900. And they are the most successful club in the country with 36 league titles, 20 league cups. And of course, they're also among the most successful clubs of the 20th century. In fact, they've been ranked 7th as the seventh most successful European club in the 20th century. Ajax have been massively successful. They're one of only 5 teams that have earned the right to keep the European Cup and wear the multiple winner badge. The only other clubs that can probably do it, Real Madrid, Liverpool, Barcelona, Milan, are probably the only, and Bayern Munich. That's right. It's a very special list of clubs to do. They also won the European Super Cup, and their most recent international trophy is 1995's Champions League in Intercontinental Club. And they're only one of 4 teams to win the Continental Treble in Intercontinental Cup in the same season year, 1971-72, and only one of 5 clubs to win all 3 major UEFA club competitions. So, pretty big stuff. Ajax are absolutely massive. And finally, last but not least, just for this brief thing, Ajax are extremely famous through their reputation of scouting, spotting, and developing young talent. So they focus on a lot of youth. And that youth is also why Ajax has produced some absolutely massive juggernauts for Dutch football. not just in stuff. So we're about to enter into Rotterdam, actually. So Rotterdam is the Netherlands' second largest city, both population and area. Came back to 1270 when a dam was constructed in the Rot, and in 1340 was granted city rights by William IV, Count of Holland. Its metro area is around 2.7 million people, and it's a major logistic and economic center. It's the largest seaport of Europe, and it's home to 180 different nationalities. It's known for its university, riverside setting, cultural life, maritime heritage, and modern architecture. Of course, Rotterdam is rich in culture. It's got plenty of great museums, including the Museum Boudewijn van Beuningen Art Museum, the World Museum, which is an ethnographic museum, and the Maritime Museum of Rotterdam. Also plays for popular music, including its famous pop festival, the Groningen Pop Festival in 1970. And it featured Pink Floyd, Jefferson Airplane, and Santana. And of course, it even once hosted Eurovision back in 2021 in 19. So pretty big stuff. Rotterdam, a very historic city, and we'll be covering it. Very important city, of course. Rotterdam is also not just home to Feyenoord. It's also host to two other first-year clubs, Excelsior, and the oldest club in the Netherlands, Sparta. Pretty important stuff. We're about to arrive in the tub. Type. Also, funnily enough, you can also find the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Kinderjik, which is where you can find the water management system. So we might be able to see a few of the windmills. So there is some of the famous windmills here, of course. In fact, I'm going to make quite a bit of a detour. I'm going to actually check out the windmills here. I'm going to make a bit of a detour. Because if you guys don't know about wind farms, of course, they are a big part of why the Netherlands has such great drainage systems. So we're going to take a bit of pictures here, take a bit of a detour. I don't usually change my flight plan in the middle of the thing, but just realized it was there. So, but don't worry, the tub is not hard to miss at all. Here it is, guys. Kinderjik. This is the famous windmills. The windmills you see a lot in the Netherlands, all the pictures. Hey, good to see you, Perico Alda. Where are you flying? We're in the Netherlands right now. We're in Rotterdam, actually. Beautiful stadium. Beautiful area here. I know it's flat. We're just arriving at De Kuip, which is the home ground of Rotterdam. Of Feyenoord, very famous Dutch club in the Netherlands. Very big stuff. Let's see if it's in the simulator. Sometimes the sim doesn't have any photogrammetry. One cool thing about Flight Sim 2024 is that there is photogrammetry cities, but that might not be the case here. So I'll have to check and look. I know in this simulator, Barcelona has photogrammetry, by the way. So in this simulator, you can actually fly over the RCD stadium How cool is that, of course? Yeah, Netherlands. Um, so you can visit over there. You can fly over the Camp Nou, do all that sort of stuff in Barcelona. Of course, there's tons of these public groundry areas in the United States of America, where I'm from. I'm from the USA, by the way. I think we'll be able to see. So we're about to fly into the tub. But beautiful country, Netherlands is really cool. I would love, like I said, I visited Europe only once. Earlier this year in June, I visited the United Kingdom. Got to visit really cool stuff in the UK. I did get to visit a very historic football stadium. I did a stadium tour of Chelsea's Stamford Bridge. Really cool. Never been to a Premier League ground before. But my favorite thing, though, was visiting Goodison Park in Liverpool, in Anfield. Really cool stuff there in the United Kingdom. Got to visit Scotland as well. So, a lot of really cool stuff. I'll be in Europe in April, and yes, I'll be in Barcelona during this time. So I'll be visiting the RCDE Stadium in person, so it should be really cool to see the Parakeets home ground. So here it is, everyone. This is the tub, the home of Feyenoord. So let's see if we can get down a little closer to it. Get a little closer to it. This way, you see the tub. Yeah, I can see why it's got that nickname. It looks like a tub. Oh, you were there last June. Oh, you're German. Oh, from Germany. Oh, fantastic. I would love to visit Germany sometime. Heidelberg. Oh, that's cool. You got to visit past the cup. Oh, fantastic. I would love to visit the Netherlands. The closest I visited to the Netherlands was when I was in St. Martin, actually. Was St. Martin. Was the closest I've ever been to the Netherlands. Which is out in the Caribbean, by the way. This was where they did the famous airport there in St. Martin. Princess Juliana, very famous for the beach landing. Really cool stuff. So, yeah, this is the cup. Yeah, fantastic though. Very, very famous grounds. If you're a football fan, definitely want to check out the cup, of course. This is the Feyenoord neighborhood of Rotterdam. Really looks like a beautiful city. I guess as a consequence of the Germans bombing the crap out of this city, the architecture is very diverse here, as you can definitely tell. Also, Europe's largest seaport, so major port area here in Europe. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And yes, by the way, this simulator also has multiplayer too. Though sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, you can fly with other people in real time. Yeah. Beautiful city though. Rotterdam's gorgeous. And yes, you can get this on PC, get it on Xbox, and apparently you can now also get this on PlayStation, because yes, this simulator is available on PlayStation 2. It's the most accessible flight sim you can get. Oh, Bretta, Utrecht, Rotterdam, Instrument, Groningen. Oh, fantastic. I love to hear that. Oh, by the way, if you're interested, I have a Discord server. It's my Discord server for the channel, of course. I do all. This is where you get all my flight sim stuff. If you're interested in checking out my flight sim stuff and want to check out the channel, you're more than welcome to. And that's where I put all the game day flights. And I do it for multiple sports, not just for soccer or football, but I also do it for baseball, basketball, American football, and plenty of other sports too. So plenty and plenty of stuff to keep variety. Okay, so this stadium up next will be on the Waypoint. This is the castle, actually. This is home to Rotterdam's original sports football club, Sparta. And you would never believe this, but this is actually my favorite Dutch. If I had to pick a Dutch club, this is my favorite, actually. Now, Rotterdam would also be there too. Doing this in Feyenoord, it's a tough choice. But it's a very unique. But Sparta's got a lot of history stuff too. So, we're going to go ahead and make our second last stop here at Rotterdam, the Hague Airport. The Hague Airport. Oh, fantastic. Thank you for joining. Here you go. Oh, yeah, and by the way, I do know you also stream too, so I'm going to give you a shout out, of course, too. Oh, nice. You work on an FS Hub. Fantastic, Devil Dude. So here it is, guys. Yeah. That's fantastic, though. You're working on your own airline, too. One of the really cool things about Flight Sim, of course, I know it takes quite a bit of money, but there's some really cool programs out there. FS Hub's one of those, and I use it too. But you can basically run your own virtual airline and stuff. You can run your own virtual airline, do your own virtual routes. The world's basically open to you. You could do team charter flights and fly your favorite teams across Europe and stuff for games. All that sort of stuff. But lots of opportunities in the flight sim community. And so this is the Rotterdam, the Hague Airport. This is also, by the way, one of the handcrafted airports in the simulator. And basically, for those that may not know, handcrafted airports is when they got special attention to detail. This was one of the ones for the Netherlands update back on the 2020 version of this. Go, and we'll back. Bicycle gear. Conventional tail dragger. Now, this plane is really good. This X-Cub there is really drives in the backcountry when you land on dirt or grass strips, airstrips. Cool stuff. So we'll stop here for about a minute or two if anyone else wants to join on in. We'll take a bit of a break. This sim, it depends on what version of the simulator. Now, of course, if you want to get this to cheapest, you can get it on Game Pass, which is the cheapest way to get Flight Sim. If you've got Xbox Game Pass, it's the cheapest when you get there. You join now for pretty cheap, and it's already on Game Pass. So that'll probably be the best way if you're not really so sure. But if you're doing the base simulator, by the way, it is around $60, I believe. Around $70 for Flight Sim 2024. It's $70, and that's just the standard edition. Now, of course, the top of the edition I got is deluxe, is premium deluxe, which is the one I got, and is not cheap. Well, it gives you 90 aircraft to fly. And the premium deluxe price I got is $120. But it's because it adds a lot of content. It adds more aircraft, more international airports, and more. But for you, I would recommend getting the standard edition. But even just standard edition, even just getting standard edition you still get a lot of different aircraft in the lineup. You still get a ton of aircraft. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. It is not cheap. You're more. Hey, Team Busy Bee, good to see you. I hope you're doing well. First time chat. I hope you're doing well, Team Busy Bee. Good to see you. We're doing the game day flight, preparing for Saturday's Ajax and Feyenoord, the Klassieker. Um, um, so that's what we're doing here today. We're flying in our good old X Cub today. We're about to take off for our last slide, covering Ajax, the most successful club in the Netherlands. So, some really cool stuff here. But I appreciate you guys coming here today. We're about to do our last Hey, thank you so much, Perico Alda. I hope to see you again soon. Maybe when we do the Espanol stream in January. But have a great day, my dude. Thanks for coming on in and supporting the channel for today. For coming on in. See you soon. So we're gonna climb up to 1,000 feet. And let's go ahead and start talking about the legendary Amsterdam club, Ajax. As we climb up to 1,000 feet. Of course, you all probably know about Ajax. They are a legendary club for their youth academies. They produce some world famous Dutch talents. Most notably, Johan Cruyff, Frank Rijkaard, Dennis Bergkamp, Marco van Basten, Wesley Sneijder, Frankie de Jong, and more have come through the ranks of Ajax's academy. And they also regularly supplies the Dutch national youth teams with local players. They also have programs in South Africa and even in Greece. Of course, their academy is so famous that in 1995, when Ajax won the UEFA Champions League, the Netherlands national team was almost entirely composed of players that played for Ajax. So yes, they are very famous for producing tons of great talent. All of them flooding through Ajax. This is a hub legendary for producing some of the best youth talent. And that's also a big reason why this club's been so successful throughout its history. When you can get legendary talents. Of course, the stadium they play in is the largest in the country. Play at the Johan Cruyff Arena. It was originally at Amsterdam Arena, but this stadium has been around for Ajax since 1996. The largest stadium in the country. It hosted the 1990 UEFA Champions League final as well as UEFA 2000. This is a very popular stadium for concerts for both international and Dutch artists. From EC to Coldplay to Michael Jackson, Armin van Buuren, and Taylor Swift have all played at the stadium, of course. This stadium is really cool because it has a retractable roof and a grass surface. Its capacity is at a whopping 55,000 people. But it can go up to 71,000 for concerts. One really cool thing about this stadium, of course, it's been the home of Ajax ever since, as well as been a major stadium for the men's national team. And of course, this stadium was built to replace the small but antiquated stadium that was historic but a bit too small for Ajax's games, the Mirror. This stadium is definitely a architectural landmark. Of course, they also did a couple renovations, and they even did a name change after the greatest Ajax legend of all. We'll talk about Johan. But really cool stadium. Over 120 years history. They got a museum here too, and it's been around Ajax for. So really cool stadium, a lot of history, a pretty modern stadium too. Really cool stuff. So this is the Hog, by the way. This is where a lot of the diplomatic stuff is actually held here in the city. This is the city center of the Hog. The Hague, I mean. Your Hog or Hague, you all probably. Definitely pretty famous here. So we're going to go ahead and turn right. We'll talk about AFC Ajax. Now, one very standout thing about the club is this historic crest and colors. Of course, Ajax was actually named after the Greek hero Ajax himself, and in 1928 they brought the original club logo that lasted all the way to 1991, where they replaced it with a more simplified, abstract version of it, and that crest lasted for about 34 years until they replaced it with a 2025-2026. So they're back to their old crest. Of course, their famous colors are the famous red and white shirts. But they didn't always play with that. They actually originally had an all-black strip with red sash, as red, black, and white are the three colors of Amsterdam's flag. However, they had to change it due to Sparta Rotterdam having the exact same outfit. And at the time, special kits didn't exist, so they had to change their colors. So Ajax replaced the black shorts with white shorts. The white shirt with a broad vertical red stripe. Hey, thank you for the follow, Team Busy T. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate you coming here too. Thank you for the follow, my dude. So of course they replaced it with the broad vertical red stripe, which is still Ajax's uniform today. So that shirt has been basically the same thing as they've been wearing since 1911. One of the most famous football shirts in Europe. Absolutely gorgeous place. Of course, in terms of rivalries and derbies with some of the other clubs here in the Netherlands, of course, we all know the rivalry with Feyenoord, which is the one we're covering here, but they also have rivalries with other Dutch clubs, including that of PSV. And while it's not as tense as the one with Feyenoord, this is still a very big rivalry, as these two are actually the most trophy-laden sides in Dutch football, and essentially a clash of the two competing schools of thought in Dutch football. PSV mainly worked with a workman-like ethic and prefer a more robust system, whereas the Netherlands have more famously favored the 4-3-3. So it's a rivalry with different schools of thought in Dutch football. Then they have a more recent rivalry that's becoming a lot more tense with AZ Alkmaar. And since both Ajax and Alkmaar are situated in North Holland, the derby is often referred to as the North Holland Derby, the Noord-Hollandes Derby. And even though they haven't first met back in the 60s, it only intensified when each won the Dutch Championship in 2009. And of course, they finally also have other rivalries with other clubs. There isn't really a big rivalry that in Amsterdam. But other clubs mostly have a rivalry with Ajax, mainly with Utrecht. So, but yeah, not really that big of a rivalry in Amsterdam. They don't really have many other clubs in Amsterdam. So, not really much of an Amsterdam derby. In terms of supporters, of course, Amsterdam Ajax has fanatic supporters, just like Feyenoord. They have massive supporter groups. Mainly, the most famous are F-Side and BAK 410. And F-Side was founded in 1976 and situated behind the goal in Johan Cruyff Arena on the southern end. and have derived from the former stadium's F side. And they're a big part of building their atmosphere, but also infamously for their rioting during and after matches. EAK 410 was mainly found in the south corner, and they're well known for performing various stunts, massive banners, to enhance the stadium of this, enhance the atmosphere. Of course, Ajax has around 7 million supporters around Europe, more so than Feyenoord and PSV, respectively, 15 most among all of Europe. So, massive supporters. They also have a big supporters club in the Netherlands. Supporters club Ajax is the largest one in the Netherlands with 94,000 members, founded in 1992. And of course, they have a lot of attendance. So lots of players playing for the club. I didn't put this down, but I did put that Ajax actually has Jewish roots. And the reason being Ajax has a long history of the Jewish community was due to the fact that the stadium was located next to the Jewish neighborhood of Amsterdam Oost, and opponents saw them walking through the Jewish corner to get the stadium. So Ajax have a long history with the Jewish identity too. And eventually became a central part of the fan culture, of course. Of course, the club has dropped a lot of its Jewish heritage as well. So definitely lots of stuff with that as well. Of course, we need to talk about the players. And the thing about Ajax is a club like Ajax, with the caliber of players they've had over the decades, this Ajax has produced some of the most legendary club names, not just in Dutch football, but world football history. Of course, when you think of Ajax superstars, there really is only one player you have to put on the list, and that is Johan Cruyff himself. In fact, he began his youth and senior career at Ajax, and one of the greatest players of all time. The dude won 3 Ballon d'Ors in 1971, 1973, and 1974. He's legendary for his philosophy of total football, and his far-reaching impact on playing style and coaching made him one of the most influential figures in modern football. Not just as a player, but as a legendary manager too. He is the greatest Dutch player by a country mile. Is the best Dutch player of all time. Of course, he played for Ajax from 1964 to 73. Scored 193 goals during his first tenure there at Ajax. That was before his famous move to FC Barcelona. And I'll bring his Barcelona career up. Barcelona. Then, of course, he played for a couple other teams, and he returned back to Ajax. And then he left Ajax to Feyenoord. I know why Feyenoord fans don't like that at all. And he is the European player of the century, and he was one of the greatest players of all time. But he's not the only legendary Ajax player. George Swart is actually the Ajax player with the most appearances, 461 league appearances at Ajax. And he totaled massive 603 matches at Ajax. With 174 career goals, he is nicknamed Mr. Ajax himself. And a big part of their 3 straight European Cup victories in 1971, 72, and 73. He's definitely a club legend at. Then you have Piet Verinen, another well-known club icon. He is actually Ajax's all-time leading goal scorer with 214. Played from 1929 to 1942. He's the club's all-time goal scorer, and he was the club's top goal scorer for 9 straight seasons, beginning in Utrecht before playing for the rest of his career at Ajax. Definitely a club legend, and he's their all-time goal scoring leader. Then, of course, one of the greatest Dutch players of all time, Marco van Basten. All you guys, Dutch guys, all probably know him. And he is a legendary legend at Ajax and AC Milan. Big club legend for both of them. He's one of the most terrifying strikers ever. However, unfortunately, he ended his career way too early. 28 years old. It was due to his recurrent ankle injury. But the dude is a three-time Ballon d'Or winner. All of them actually at AC. But he's still an Ajax legend, and he's still one of the greatest players of all time. 6th in the FIFA player of the century. Of course, he's absolutely an Ajax legend. He was even a manager at Ajax in one. You have Ruud Giels, played from 1974 to 1978. One of the all-time great Dutch talents. He was he's won the scoring title 5 times during his time in Eredivisie, and he's one of only 2 footballers in the Netherlands to play for the Big Three. But of course, he played quite a few. But I think his peak came at Ajax. Let's see. Then we have Luis Suarez started his career at actually got his break at Ajax. He played for a bit of Groningen and Nationale, but he really got his big break at Ajax, where he scored 81 goals in 110 appearances for them before he moved to Liverpool and later at Barcelona. But definitely an iconic, legendary player. Then we have Geert Keizer. 365 appearances, one of the iconic forwards of Dutch football. Is one of the greatest players in the Netherlands history. Then, of course, after that is Dennis Bergkamp from 1986 to 1993 for his last career. Scored 103 goals in 185 appearances. Born and raised in Amsterdam. But, of course, he was an iconic star of the Netherlands. But of course, his legendary career really became a legend, though, when he left to join Arsenal. We might talk about him, too, during his Arsenal time. But he was definitely a major piece for Ajax. And then finally, Ruud Krol played for the club as well, another well-known star for Ajax. And, of course, there are so many more legends for Ajax, it's not even fun. No, really, it's not funny just how many club legends have played for Ajax. Yeah, the ball's round, you gotta score one more goal than your opponent. That's right. And last but not least, before we get to the arena, of course, honors of Ajax. 36 Eredivisie titles, which is a record. 20 Dutch Cups, most recently in 2021. 9 Johan Cruyff Shields. Of course, they won 4 Champions League trophies. They also won a Europa League, a Cup Winners' Cup, 2-time Super Cup winner, and an International Football Cup championship. And they won 2 Intercontinental Cups. But they are by far the most decorated team in the country. Not even close. They are the biggest. So here we are, guys. We're just about, we just came in a good time, guys. We're about to visit Johan Cruyff Arena, home of AFC Ajax. I know some of you guys are thinking, why did they name their club after Ajax, after the Greek hero? It's actually a pretty good question why they named them Ajax. I guess the reason is that Ajax is known first. So this is Johan Cruyff Arena, home of Ajax. So he was named after the heroic figure of Greek mythology. So he's said to be the greatest, and that is what Ajax stood to be. And honestly, it makes sense considering that's what Ajax had to be club after. That is the Johan Cruyff Arena in Amsterdam. After pause. That is the big old Johan Cruyff Unleashed. We're about to fly a little bit lower into Amsterdam, of course. So this is Amsterdam, the largest city in the Netherlands, and one of the bigger cities in Europe. The Venice of the North is what it's called, thanks to its large number of canals. Founded at the mouth of the Amsterdam River, it was originally a small fishing village in the 12th century. However, it became a wool port during the Dutch Gold Age of the 17th century, where the Netherlands became an economic powerhouse. And it continued to grow ever since, becoming a tradition of openness, liberalism, and tolerance. Cycling is a huge part of its characters, and it's world famous for its museums, canals, culture. Especially the Rijksmuseum, the Van Gogh Museum, and the Royal Palace. As well as the Anne Frank House, the Hortus Botanicus, and of course the infamous Red Light District. And of course its oldest modern stock exchange, Amsterdam Stock Exchange. But it's definitely really one of the world's great cities. Amsterdam, absolutely gorgeous. We're gonna fly a little slower so we can get into this well. This is Amsterdam. Look at all these canals, man. Really cool. Such a cool city, Amsterdam. So, one last thing I want to show you before we leave here for a bit. So I do want to show you briefly about the Ajax website for AFC Ajax. I'm going to show you briefly about the website, of course. This is the Ajax website. Of course, it's got section for the fans. You can visit the stadium tour, of course. It's got plenty of history stuff. It's got the history of Ajax, all the rich history of the club. They're called Rich History. They also got a fan store here too. You can get your Ajax gear. Of course, I always like to check out the scarves and stuff, the stadium stuff, the scarves. Really cool stuff. Of course, you can take this tour of Johan Cruyff. You can do a classic tour. You can do a guided one, a VIP tour. Check out Ajax. Yeah, really cool stuff. Ajax is neat. It's also called the 020 for those who don't know Amsterdam. Yeah, it's the number of Amsterdam. You start with that number to call someone. Got it. Thank you, Devil Dude. But yeah, Ajax still a really historic club. Yeah, I definitely didn't know about that. Yeah, you can talk all. It's definitely pretty cool to visit the Netherlands. Like I said, I love exploring different teams, different clubs that we don't usually get the chance to find normally if we were to stick to the big league. But I really enjoyed this flight. This was a very enjoyable flight. So by the way, guys, our next game day flight will be the Chicago Bears and Packers. The Packers versus Bears. Um, I'll be our next game of the series. Bears and Packers, of course. Is Bears and Packers, of course. Bears and Packers. That will be our next game day flight. So we'll talk about some of the legendary NFL players that play for the Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers, of course. We'll talk all about it. There's tons of really cool stuff about both these NFL franchises, especially if you're a Packers fan, because they are probably the most unique American franchise in American sports. But basically, for those who don't know, the Packers are fan owned. Yes, way more common in Europe, but it's extremely rare in the USA. But um, we're gonna go. We're gonna land here at the Glider Field. Then we'll wrap up the stream. Then and we'll find someone to raid. So I really enjoyed this flight. We'll be back on Sunday, of course. Oh, we'll raid. I think we'll raid Bonnie's player. I don't really raid his stream very much. Let's raid Bonnie's player. We'll raid him. Up, ready to get landing very soon. But yeah, the Netherlands definitely a really underrated place. I'm glad I got a chance to visit. Oh, So here we go, and we stopped. Beautiful. PG, that is a beautiful landing here. And that's it. We're at Echo Hotel Charlie Alpha. That concludes today's flight. A really neat flight in over the Netherlands today. Should be a lot of fun, of course. Now we will be returning back on Sunday. We'll be doing our national park series. We'll be doing it over the beautiful scenery of Lassen Volcanic. So we'll be seeing you guys. Um, so we'll be seeing you guys here pretty soon. So we'll be seeing you guys Sunday here. Our next game day flight will be on the Bears and Packers, of course. Legendary rivalry in the NFL. So take care, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Have a great start of your week. Goodbye, everyone.